Okay, so I was just thinking about this subject. I've thought about it before, but I haven't actually filmed myself talking about it. So it has to do with how not feeling well. Anyway, it has to do with how I would budget at the moment if I was kind of making slightly more, sort of significantly more to me at the time than I've ever made in my life. So I figured the average maybe individual was making, once you take out taxes and stuff, maybe around 30,000 a year, I'm guessing. I know if you research like for each household, I think the average is higher, but you have to divide that by the number of individuals in the household. So finding individual numbers as far as stats is kind of tough, but I was trying to, do a mock budget with a number that seemed maybe with a miracle kind of realistic for me. So I just settled on the 30,000 number, and I kept in mind that, these would be kind of low income, maybe inconsistent hours, that kind of stuff. So, the first thing, which, you get excited kind of when you find a job and you get hired and all that, but, I thought about it and I'm like, well, if you can't maintain the job because you don't have the items you need, and these jobs are strict, especially these low-wage jobs, you have to look very neat. You have to look, especially for women, very together. I mean, technically, it's not in the employee handbook that you have to wear, for instance, cosmetics or look a certain way, but that might be sort of the vibe. So it's kind of mandatory, stuff like that. And ideally, you would have it in savings before you got like this theoretical job, because otherwise, unless you've got resources or very nice individuals, you're very lucky. I don't know how you would do it. I was trying to think about it, of like, let's say you had nothing, and how would you manage initially, like at least until you get your first check, and then maybe you would still need things, So how would you manage? So for clothes, there are, like for instance, there's called, it's mainly meant to be for mothers, but they'll take women in general. It's called, what is it called? Haven, or there's organizations out there, really hard to find, but they give out free clothing essentially and other items. You could try garage sales. It's going to cost money, but maybe a lot less. Could try clothes on clearance, same thing. I found a shirt recently for a few bucks at the mall on clearance. Kind of rare you find something that cost, but let's see, what else would I do? I had a friend, for instance, she was going to donate, just by coincidence, she told me. Like, we were in the car, I had no idea what she was doing for the day, and she was like, well, not a total idea. And she was taking me, we were both going somewhere, and she was like, I'm going to donate these clothes, do you want some? So she had offered, and it was a whole bunch of stuff. Now, they were too large for me, to be honest, but hey, you make do. And certain things doesn't really matter sizing too much, like underwear or, undershirts, you just tuck them in. Even shirts sometimes, you just can't be too choosy. I've had an instance where, I went on like a neighborhood sort of forum and talked about the situation that, I had gotten a new job, but for instance, there was a time, because the job required a certain uniform, I didn't have the kind of clothes that was required. So I said that, then somebody kind of came through eventually and had the idea was meant to give her the money back, but honestly, I never did. And it was just like a t-shirt. I think it was a single t-shirt or something from like a discount store, and she really saved my ass. She really did. Because, yeah, they would have let me go much sooner, I'm sure. Much, much sooner, just because of that. Because a lot of these jobs, I was kind of shocked how, not understanding they are with the dress code. Like, my manager was trying to get me to, he continued mentioning it. And, within a few days, finally, he was like, okay, what's going on, And then he was kind about it. He's like, oh, is the issue, financial, like you can't afford? And I kind of meekly said yes, and he gave me the money. So it wasn't a lot. It was like $50 or something, but I was able to at least get a few things on sale. So that was a blessing. Most managers don't do that. But yeah, so some managers might, I don't know. I guess you could maybe talk to your job about it. So those are just some ideas. As far as like neighborhood forums, there's Nextdoor, there's Buy Nothing. I would be cautious about Nextdoor though, because technically I think that's not allowed. But I think Buy Nothing, I didn't have issues. Ask friends or family, like, hey, do you have any clothing, any items, whatever you need that, they may give away. You never know. You never know what folks may have. All right, so then, let's see. What's other things that you may need when you're just starting out a job? Like laundry detergent maybe, or stuff like that. That's very necessary. I guess maybe you could use alternatives, like if you really had to, hand wash or something. I'm not sure. I don't know. Don't ruin your clothes on this advice. I think you technically can. If you hand wash, you might have to hand wash. Let's see, I don't know, like some food banks or stuff like that, they do give some hygiene stuff and laundry and stuff like that, detergents. If you've got some money, it's like you can do, there's all sorts of sales all the time at stores, like you buy a certain amount and you get a slight discount. Sometimes it's a decent discount. So, like you save maybe half off or whatever it is. That's why it helps to have some money. What else we may need? Getting to the work location, to the job. That one's kind of tough. I've heard if you qualify for disability, you can get free, use the bus for free. But, how likely is that if you're struggling this much that, you're going to be able to qualify? I don't know. You can ask friends or family, but I know many don't have that. It's not a viable reality. Like myself, I couldn't. Family and friends were not going to do it, and that was that. We're not going to take me to my jobs consistently at all. That one I think is the toughest. When you don't have money to get around, it's because it's costly. It can, after a while, it's really, really costly. I don't know. Sounds kind of controversial, but honestly, maybe try to befriend, date someone, whatever, and have that be a requirement. Because I know some couples, I know a couple, for instance, and that's what they do. They share one vehicle, and one individual is always driving around the other, etc. So that's just how they schedule their life, what else? I don't know if they have it for jobs. They should, but at least in the US for medical, if you've got state insurance, you can get free rides for medical visits. And the government should really, or the state or whatever, the county, there should be some sort of things like that for, jobs. Why not have our taxes go to something like that instead of all this nonsense? Anyway, but the idea for the budget is in general is that you're using your savings for this kind of stuff. And this budget does assume that you're living with somebody for free or very low cost. So, yeah, because honestly, if it's not free, it's going to take forever to move into some other housing situation with the cost of housing nowadays and the whole crisis that's going on with that. So, regardless, it would take years, but so we're assuming the rent is either free or it's $800 a month with like $150 utilities. So you're not living in anything glamorous, most likely. It's very modest living situation, living with others, I don't see how you can find a way around that with only making about $30,000. So I had clothes for about $400. So I was thinking, like, once you get your first check, which when I was at jobs, I remember one time it was around $1,000. I think usually it's much smaller, and then they give you a much smaller check and then they give you a larger one. Usually I think that's how it works. But we're just going to make it easy and assume that your first check is just about a flat 1,000. So, just in case, like, let's say you've got no savings or little savings and you've barely been able to find a way to find money for your working costs. Like, you're barely finding enough clean clothes, barely enough food, barely able to get to work just by some kind of miracle. Sometimes you may have to walk. Like, there were many times I had to walk an hour, 2 hours, take a bus, do all that, and just had to do that for like a week or two until I got my check. Basically. Because, it took a while before anybody would give me a hand, and mostly they wouldn't, So, for me, I think based on what my working life, I would say, the first $1,000, it's like that needs to go mainly to making sure you've got savings for your working costs. Just in case, in case like something goes wrong with your clothing or your food, or, you have a tough time getting to work. So let's just assume you're trying to build that, because let's just assume you've got no savings. So if you do have enough savings, you can skip this, but for the first check, I would do $400 for clothes, and that's not a whole lot. That's like, because I was thinking if an outfit, let's say a shirt is $20, jeans is about $20, which is very low. You got your underwear, socks, stuff like that. Let's say that's another, I don't know, we'll just estimate it at about $50 for each outfit. And let's say you work Monday to Friday or something, $250. That's like $250 a week already, just for an outfit a day. So it's not a whole lot. But it's at least a little bit more of something. Because because I was trying to think about this in terms of timing, because that's the thing about being low income and having because most jobs in the US, even good ones, are at will, so they can let you go at any time. So when you're low wage, it's like timing. You have to really schedule things out, and so many things can go wrong, so you have to have a alternative A, B, and C. So the details of how you manage the money is very key. So food, I said about 100, at least you have something. Imagine, for instance, you're having a tough time to get to work and you're barely eating. That's going to be really hard. Even 100 is not that much, but at least you've got something. Commute, 200, yes, it can be that much. It can be even much more. So I'm assuming you're working quite locally. That's the other thing too, or from home or something like that. So we're assuming the 1,000 will be for bi-weekly, so for about 2 weeks. Hygiene, I had about 20 for the whole 2 weeks, which that's just basic deodorant, body wash, whatever, stuff like that. Kitchen, I had 200, which kind of seems like a lot, but kitchen stuff, sometimes they're not that cheap. Like a microwave, I think the one I got was about $50. Oven, toaster, about the same thing. Just the basics. You need enough utensils, you need enough tools, you need this is something I really wish I got enough pots and stuff like that to cook with, pans, because if you're busy, you may not have time to necessarily wash the dishes in time, and then you're limited on how many meals you can make because you can only use something so many times and not wash it. So wash them. So it seems kind of large, but I think 200 is I would say it's one of the first few things you have to do, because this is about eating and trying to find a way to make it most cost effective. So that's going to save you money in the long term, so you won't have to eat out, you won't have to do all these things. Hair, 50. That might be a little too big, but I know some folks, it's especially women, again, it's all the costs of making yourself look a certain way, and I'm sure 50 is considered low for some women. Beauty, I just had the remainder, which was about 30. So either use what you have, or I guess you can go to Dollar Tree, would fit this budget, if you need many things. They've got some good stuff, honestly. So for general budget, just throughout the year, I didn't really schedule or time this out. Streaming services, I thought, okay, you can choose about 2, let's say. That's it. So you will have to cut. I think it's because I thought maybe add a few more, but then I saw the total cost and I'm like, this is a lot to waste when there's free entertainment. So that's the thing. It's shows and stuff like that, they're nice, but there's so many free ways to watch shows and movies and stuff. So to waste too much money is kind of ridiculous. At least other things you can't necessarily see or make yourself. So I had that at about 240. I would look for bundles if you're a big streaming service individual. Look for bundles. There's one where it gives you sports, it gives you Hulu, I think, and something else all in one, and it's less than 20 a month. So maybe do that bundle and something else, and that's it. Oh, I forgot Lyft in here, which would, I don't know, oh, and I'm also assuming this is a budget for someone who is doesn't have vehicle costs. to maintain their own vehicle. So there's no auto insurance, there's no gas. Again, you're living a very basic lifestyle. You're not really going out much at all. You're not eating out. No vacations, no. And I think this is just what you have to do on a low income, because I look through the numbers and things are just too expensive. There's no other way. If you do have to, if you do have a vehicle, it's treat that as your treasure and use it on occasion. That's a special treat, not using it all the time to go everywhere. And then you have to get a new one sooner. It's just, so beauty, I had at about $360 a year, which seems like a lot, but that's only about $30 a month. For me, it's I like just getting things when I can at discount stores, so it's kind of like a hobby, and that's about $30 a month. So that's another $360. Again, seems like a lot to me, but you need a little bit of something. You're working this hard, need a little bit of joy, I guess. Animals, I don't think you can really fully take care of, because I've thought about it, should folks who have a low income have animals? And it's I don't think they really have the money to fully take care of too many animals. Maybe a single animal, maybe two max. And the rest, it's you can sort of be a sitter or do something. If you want more animals in your life, then volunteer, or there's folks I see online. I think this is kind of controversial, but there's folks who will feed, stray animals. Usually find them in a parking lot or something. Because the food itself isn't that costly. So the food and the water and stuff you can manage. But the issue is if they get injured, especially the vet bills, the health insurance. Yeah, they have health insurance for animals. Stuff like that. Furniture, if they're indoors, trying to train them and get them used to living with humans, that can be costly. So I just had about $400 a month. So I think that's more so just for a single animal because of the insurance. So that's $4,800. The other thing I thought of is if you can find somebody who it's you get to have your own way of looking after them, and they get to have their own way, and that's just how it is. You kind of share the burden. So you cover the cost of, let's say, an animal, and someone else covers the cost of another animal, but both of you guys get to see them in equal ways or whatever, interact. That might be a win-win situation. Savings, I had about $5,000, although that might be less. Basically just whatever's remaining after all this. And so that's essential to have at least, I would say, $1,000, because, in case you lose your job and you're trying to find another one, you have to get to interviews, you have to get to the job, clothing, all that. So debt, if you have that, maybe about $2,000 is what I had. Although with the current situation, it's in the US and all over the world, it's should we take care of our debt? Or, I don't know. Or should we just try to have as much savings as we can, invest, all that stuff? So maybe it's best to just ignore the debt and have that go into savings. I don't know. That's a big risk, but You have to really think about which one, and I'm not an expert, and I don't feel qualified to say do one or the other. So for commute, I had about 4,800, so that's about, how did I calculate that? I think 200 a week, or every 2 weeks. I think I assumed every 2 weeks, so 400 a month basically. Yeah, I think it was about 400 a month. And it could be even more than that when you don't have a vehicle. This is just taking Lyfts and Uber to work, nothing else. So if I had to take extra Ubers or Lyft or something, that would, come from the savings. Food, 3,600 sounds like a lot, really. But, that's about 300 a month, which, you can buy in bulk. So I find having a larger food budget for health reasons, for being able to save in bulk, is better than having a lower budget in general. So I think 300 is fair. You can buy a lot of food with that and still be able to qualify for discounts and all that. So you just get, you make your dollars stretch further when you have more money to use. That's just how it works. Because of the discounts where you have to spend a certain amount. Housing, so this is assuming that's about 9,600 a year in savings. No, not 96. So you would use about 900 a month or 800 a month for your current housing, or it could be zero, but let's say max 900 a month, and then the rest you would use for your future savings for housing. So that's why I was saying it could take years. It would take years to actually save enough. Well, actually, yeah, it would, because a lot of these, it might, let's just say it might. And then the utilities, same idea. So that's, let's say it's about $150 a month currently, and then you're saving about another year's worth. So the idea is you're dealing with your housing costs currently, whatever they are, and then you're saving that amount or you're saving at least 900 for housing and 150 for utilities. You're saving that for the future as well. So yeah, that's really it. There aren't a lot of categories. It's not that complicated. It's just you have your general categories, and other than that, you're trying not to make more new ones. And you're trying to stick to your budget and not spend more than the numbers allow. The other thing I didn't write in here was like socializing. So sometimes you may have to eat out, but I would be very, like maybe 100 a month, very low. Because it's not worth it. It's a waste of money to, unless like you're socializing and it's like social networking and it's really worth it. Like unless you're getting some amazing opportunities for your current life and your future life, or if you have to do that for work. But I'm just talking about an ordinary individual. Like, what are the chances you'll find something socially that will give you all those benefits? Not likely. Very low. So, just to waste money to socialize with random folks that can't give you benefits, it's like, you're just socializing with folks who are like you. That's it. And wasting a whole bunch of money doesn't make sense. So if you're just socializing for yourself, for your own amusement or whatever, then I think 100 a month, that's fine. just meet once a week or whatever, get a beverage, or do something very locally, very basically almost free. Invite, everybody can stay at a location, bring food or whatever, watch a movie, I don't know, something like that. So yeah, that is how I would budget about $30,000 a year on a low-income, unstable job. And even like 30 an hour, I didn't do the math, but I think this budget would be like 25 an hour or something, full-time. No, not even full-time. But even like 25 or 30 an hour full-time it's not that much money. It's not much more than this. So I don't know. This is just for like somebody who you don't know what's going to occur. You don't know if you're going to find a full-time job. You don't know if a job is actually full-time. You don't know. So it's better like safe than sorry. It's better to assume that you will be making less money than more. So yeah, as far as what I did, I never made quite this much, but all the more reason I shouldn't have wasted so much money on beauty and like non-necessity sort of items like that. Should have started saving for a vehicle or housing, which I did start to do, but then it just felt like there was no light and useless, and I'm always going to be in this situation. So I failed. I quit. I'm like, doing all this for what? So this does require quite a bit of, I don't know if it's faith or motivation or what. It is emotionally tough. Because you're living like this month after month. It's very tough. I wish I, used more of my money, a little bit more on like the kitchen stuff and being able to make my own food easier. Same with the clothing, like all the necessary items. I wish I focused more of. The other thing I did, which was smart, was with this kind of income, you need to always think about the future and, have a bit extra for the future at least. So extra clothing, hygiene stuff, hair. It doesn't need to be a lot extra, but just in case one day you get let go, you lose your job. It's like you still have to function. So either have extra things or enough savings is what I'm saying. And sometimes it's easier to get extra things because of the, all the different deals. Like if you see a deal where you're going to get a free item and you spend about the same that you usually do anyway, that's easier to get that free item rather than try to find the savings, try to find the money and save for it kind of thing. So what you do exactly as far as how to obtain things for the future is very detail dependent. But yeah. Anyway, I did get something for myself. I'm not too worried because I thought about it. It didn't cost that much, but I got it for myself. I guess I thought, it can be worst case scenario. It can be like my only Christmas gift, and that's it. So I got that for myself. Even though I got no income now, but at least I'm trying not to go into the negative again with the new bank account that I've got now. So that's kind of a little bit of what's going on now. But yeah. I don't have savings, so if I do find a job and start that or volunteering or whatever, I have to somehow find the money for all that I mentioned that you need when you first have a job. Some of it I won't, but definitely at least getting to the location, maybe food, yeah. So for me, I might need, I don't know, I'm guessing like maybe about 500, maybe a little bit more before my first check. Yeah, so we will see. Anyway, I'm just wishing that will be useful, and honestly, why I'm talking about this now is I'm trying to figure out on my channel like what would get the most views, and it seems like when I talk about this kind of stuff, that's what gets the most views. About, if I talk about life changing and life circumstances. So that's it for now. Bye.